Year, 1574. Place, the port of Seville, southern Spain. The air smells of salt, tar, and pure greed. Every church bell in the city is screaming at once. Thousands of people are crammed shoulder to shoulder along the Guadalquivir River, some climbing rooftops, others hanging from masts. Then they appear, a wall of white sails on the horizon, so many that the sea itself looks like it's wearing armor. The Spanish treasure fleet has returned from the Indies. When the first galleon drops anchor, the crowd falls silent for one heartbeat, then erupts. Soldiers in gleaming breastplates have to hold the line as chests are hauled onto the docks. The lids come off. Sunlight hits bars of silver so pure they look wet. Gold escudos pour out like sand. One chronicler wrote that the pile was taller than a man on horseback. A single fleet in 1574 carried roughly 2 million pesos. Enough to run the entire English government for 5 straight years. And this wasn't a rare event. This was annual. For 150 years. This was the Spanish Empire at its absolute peak. An empire so large that, for the first and only time in history, the sun genuinely never set on its domains. From San Francisco to Santiago, from Manila to Milan, from Algiers to Angola. One king, one cross, one currency. In 1600, Mexico City had 100,000 people, street lighting, and a university founded in 1551. London had 200,000 people living in wooden fire traps, drinking from the same river they shat in. Lima, Peru, had marble palaces while Paris still had open sewers in the middle of the street. St. Augustine, Florida, 1565, and Santa Fe, New Mexico, 1610, existed before a single English settler dared stay the winter on the Atlantic coast. Spain didn't just win the colonial lottery. Spain broke the machine and took all the coins, and yet, exactly 1 century later, the same Spain was a bankrupt, depopulated, ridiculed shell. Its navy was laughed at. Its currency was toilet paper. Its European territories were being carved up by nations 1/10 its size. By 1808, Napoleon marched into Madrid almost unopposed and put his brother on the throne like it was a weekend hobby. So I'm going to ask you the question that still haunts economists, historians, and kings. How do you inherit the greatest windfall in human history and end up poorer than the countries that got nothing? Here's the full autopsy. Phase 1. The Silver Tsunami between 1500 and 1660. Approximately 180,000 tons of silver and 2,000 tons of gold crossed the Atlantic to Spain. To give you scale, that's 80% of the world's silver production and 85% of its gold production for that entire period. The Potosi mine alone, discovered 1545, produced roughly 45,000 tons of silver. Worth in today's dollars between 500 billion and 1 trillion. At its height, Potosi had 160,000 inhabitants and 86 churches with solid silver altars. One Spanish official wrote, "If you dropped a coin in the street, nobody bent to pick it up. Too much silver, too little dignity." The system was simple and brutal. The crown took the quinto real 20% royal tax. Private merchants and miners shipped the rest. Twice a year, the Flota de Indias and the Galeones de Tierra Firme left Veracruz and Cartagena with warship escorts and arrived in Seville 6 months later. One captured manifest from 1628 lists 2 million pesos in official treasure alone. More than the annual GDP of Portugal. Spain became the world's first global narco-state, except the drug was silver and it was perfectly legal. Phase 2. The Price Revolution, aka how to destroy your own people with money. Too much silver equals money becomes worthless. Basic economics, lethal consequences. 1500 to 1650, grain prices in Spain rose 400%. Olive oil, 500%. Textiles, 600%. A carpenter in 1550 earned 5 maravedis a day. By 1620 he earned 35. But bread that cost 5 maravedis now cost 26. Real wages for ordinary Spaniards fell by 50 to 70%. Riots became routine. Banditry exploded. Whole villages were abandoned as peasants fled taxes they could no longer pay in a currency that bought nothing. The elites? They made fortunes. They got the silver first, bought land and titles before prices adjusted, and lent money at insane interest rates to a crown that was already addicted. Phase 3. The death of Spanish industry, Why manufacture anything when you can just buy it with magic metal? Castile's famous merino wool industry, once the envy of Europe, collapsed because raw wool was exported and finished cloth imported from Flanders. Toledo steel, legendary for centuries, couldn't compete with cheaper German and Italian imports paid for in American silver. Spanish shipyards rotted while the Dutch built the cheapest, fastest merchant ships on earth using Spanish money. By 1650, Spain was importing everything: grain from the Baltic, cloth from England and Holland, weapons from Germany, even fish from the North Sea. The empire became a giant Walmart for the rest of Europe. Phase 4. Holy Wars on Credit. The Habsburg motto: God in debt will provide. They fought literally everyone. The Ottoman Empire. Lepanto 1571 cost a fortune and achieved nothing strategic. The Dutch Revolt, 1568 to 1648. 80 years of bleeding money into the Low Countries. Swamp, France. Multiple wars. England Spanish Armada 1588, 10 million ducats down the drain. The 30 Years' War, 1618 to 1648. Spain spent an estimated 300 million ducats propping up the Catholic side. Every campaign paid for with tomorrow's silver. Phase 5. Sovereign debt junkie. Spain pioneered the modern bond market and the modern debt spiral. Kings issued juros, government bonds, secured on future silver fleets. Interest rates hit 40 to 60% because everyone knew default was coming. Bankers in Augsburg, Fugger's, Antwerp, and later Genoa became richer than most kings. When a fleet was late or lost, the crown suspended payments, converted old debt into new debt at worse terms, and kicked the can down the road. Official defaults: 1557, 1560, 1575, 1596, 1607, 1627, 1647, 1662, and more silent restructurings in between. 9 public bankruptcies in 150 years. The richest empire in history was also the world's first serial sovereign defaulter. Phase 6. State-sponsored piracy wins wars without battles. England and the Netherlands realized you didn't need to invade Spain. You just had to rob its ATM twice a year. 1585 to 1604. Elizabeth I openly funded privateers. Francis Drake alone brought home treasure worth £600,000 in one voyage, half of England's yearly revenue. 1628. Piet Eng's capture of the entire Tierra Firme fleet in the Bay of Matanzas. 177,000 pounds of silver, 1 million guilders in gold and goods. The Dutch used it to pay their army for 2 full years and still had change. Every lost fleet equals immediate liquidity crisis in Seville equals forced debt restructuring equals higher interest rates equals less money for armies equals weaker Spain. The pirates weren't criminals. They were venture capitalists with cannons. Phase 7. Extraction versus compounding. This is the knife twist. Spain's model: extract silver, ship it home, spend it or lose it to creditors and enemies. England and Holland's model: take the same silver, often stolen, invest in ships, canals, banks, joint stock companies, universities, patents, colonies that produced cash crops, not just metals. Spain had the biggest balance sheet entry in history. Its rivals had the better income statement and the better business model. The final body count by 1700. Spanish population down 25%. Castile lost half its villages, per capita income lower than in 1500. Currency devalued 80%. Navy reduced from 100 galleons to a dozen leaky hulks. European territories stripped away in the War of the Spanish Succession. Napoleon walks in like he owns the place. The empire that discovered the New World became Europe's sick man in just 4 generations. The warning written in silver: every society that discovers a magic money tree repeats the Spanish script. Venezuela with oil, Nauru with phosphate, crypto millionaires who YOLO into Lambos and rugs. Central banks printing trillions and calling it transitory. Easy money without productive capacity is civilization-level fentanyl. Real wealth is not what you extract. Real wealth is what you build that keeps producing after the mine runs dry. Spain had the greatest treasure fleet ever launched. England had the Royal Navy and the East India Company. The Dutch had the VOC and the Amsterdam Bourse. One model died with the last galleon. The other model still rules the world in 2025. History doesn't repeat, but it does scream at anyone willing to listen. The richest empire that ever existed died poor because it mistook treasure for power. Don't make the same mistake. If this one rattled your cage, smash that subscribe button. Next video. How a tiny island with 0 precious metals stole Spain's throne and built the modern and still runs the show today. Drop one word in the comments if you felt this. Systems. See you on the other side.